will sit close in case I have to jump up and run. Take a microphone somewhere. Do whatever you gotta do. No, we're actually really, it was more like stand by. Don't know what we need you to do.
Stand down.
You've got a role. Stand.
I have a role.
You have a role. A legit.
My final.
I feel like I'm doing one more board. I just came back for 1 year. I was off the board and they pulled me back. But it was for 1 year. I'm holding them to it. I'm really, I need to be a participant. And not lead anything.
I did fundraising.
Yeah. What?
Did you check in?
No.
Did you check in so that we can
Yes, ma'am.
form?
Yeah, I thought
We have it already.
we had all that.
Yeah, but I want
All right.
a real strong number.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good to see you.
I know you're busy.
unlike everything else, which you have to do every day, you have to like a password protected thing that's legal.
Could you? There's no rush. It's self-pay. Could you notify us?
Where you going to?
I just want to put it in our house.
I'm just trying to think of something. I'm literally scanning my house now, putting machines.
I brought Darren pre-show me on a CD, and he was like, "What the hell is this?"
Who uses this anymore?
How's life in China?
Like the administrative staff.
Yeah. College is like.
Oh, yes. I'm going to one of her birthdays. Yes.
And she did it for like a year or two.
And it's hard too because like
She said,
she's
"I
so
never wanted to
intense
do
about
that."
everything, and I'm like, because I get older, I get less intense about stuff.
It's a relatable experience.
Oh my god, it's like she's like, this thing's going the way I planned. I'm like, holy shit, bro.
Excellent.
A lot of days like, it's hard to calm down.
All right. All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all. Last call for folks to join the annual meeting. Okay. Looks like. All right. So let us begin. Can you hear? Can you? If I no. Hello? Testing. How's that? Okay, I'm getting thumbs up on that one. Okay, great. All right, good morning, or not good morning, good afternoon, and welcome everyone. I'm so glad you could all join us for the 2024 annual meeting of the congregation. I am... This is good. We'll keep this energy going. This is great. So I'm Burke Kapler. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees and a member of the Board of Trustees. So in today's meeting, we're going to be reviewing what we've accomplished and what we've gone through in the past year. We're looking ahead to 2024 and 2025. We're going to be voting on a budget for the coming year and the slate of nominees for church offices. We'll also be remembering those we've lost, and we'll be honoring those who have made extraordinary contributions to our beloved community. So to begin, I'll ask Reverend Amanda, our senior minister, to light our chalice and to offer an opening reading to center us. If you're watching at home, we invite you to light your own chalice at home.
Thanks, Burke. I was talking with someone recently who is newer to Unitarian Universalism and to the practice of our faith. And it reminded me what a unique experience it is to be part of a denomination and part of a religious tradition where we do this, where we gather and make decisions together, where the gathered people, the congregation, the body of people is a directional guidepost for the tradition. And so I was thinking about that and thinking about all of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations who had their annual meetings last week or today or next week, and all the colleagues that have been checking in and saying, is yours done? How did it go? And just appreciating our shared commitment to that work and to what we create together. Because we all have annual meetings within Unitarian Universalist congregations, we have liturgical resources for them. And so this is titled A Prayer Before Annual Meeting. It is by the Reverend Kristen Green, and I offer it, and then we'll light our chalice. May our minds and hearts be opened this morning so that the day is able to blossom and flourish in life-giving ways. May we view each other as partners, comrades, friends on the journey, headed in a direction together toward wholeness. May our voices be gentle and purpose-filled. May our energy create space for everyone. May our hands open to one another as help when needed. May our values shine through our decisions and our strivings be made clear through our discussions. May our lives speak of a shared future where we transform the world through acts of love and justice. Blessed be, may it be so. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Amanda. So I will now call this meeting to order. And actually, I don't know if you know this, but this job comes with a gavel, which as a lawyer, I cannot get enough of this, so. So we'll begin by... All right. Well done. All right. We'll begin by having our UUCA Secretary, Emily Abraham, go over some of the governance requirements for this meeting. So as Secretary, Emily will be taking notes during the meeting and will be drafting the meeting minutes that we'll be discussing at next year's annual meeting. So Emily?
Thanks, Burke. Nobody told me to bring a prop. But hello, everyone, and good afternoon. So we'll check in on a few governance items for the meeting. Notice of the meeting was communicated to all members and friends on May 30th, which was at least 10 days prior to the meeting per our bylaws. We've had reminder communications since then as well. I verified with Annie Parker that the confirmed member list of eligible voters was the list used to create the Election Buddy invitations for voting, with online voting opening last Friday at 1 p.m. and concluding today during our meeting. As Secretary, I'll also be taking minutes for this meeting, and those will be provided to the board for approval at its next monthly meeting. The board authorized absentee ballots to count towards quorum, and will use members who voted to determine quorum. Over 134 members have already voted as of the beginning of this meeting, and so we do have quorum today.
All right. Yay. So thank you, Emily. As chair, I'm also appointing Emily Shepard to serve as parliamentarian for this meeting. Emily will be available to help us resolve any bylaw, governance, or voting issues that may arise. I'm sorry. Yeah, Amy Shepard is our parliamentarian. Right. And yes, and that is the sound you will hear if those happen.
I will calm down, I promise I will.
Yes. So to begin, I'd formally like to ask Reverend Carol Thomas Sissel to read our UUCA covenant to guide the conduct of the meeting. So, Rev CTC.
Covenant is the silk that joins. It joins communities together. It joins collectives together. It creates a web of interconnection amongst all of us here. This promise, this covenant to walk together, lies at the very core of our existence as a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Our covenant. We covenant with each other, promising our goodwill and honest effort, pledging our care and support to another and to our church community, challenging one another to live in accord with our Unitarian Universalist principles. With this common purpose as our source, we covenant to welcome all who come to us with acceptance and respect for the differences among us, to practice patience and speak the truth directly and with compassion, to reflect carefully about the potential results of our words and actions before we speak or act, to keep our discussions to topics and issues rather than personalities, to acknowledge that we may not always agree with what the group decision is, but we will support and participate in decision-making processes that are collaborative and democratic, to seek to resolve disagreements to our mutual satisfaction and to ask for help when needed, to speak directly to those with whom we have disagreements, to facilitate direct communication between parties in conflict when appropriate, to act with loving kindness, seeking to promote justice, equity, and compassion, to speak out with loving kindness when we witness disrespectful interactions, to understand that building our beloved community requires learning and practice. UUCA Congregational Covenant.
Thank you, Ref CTC. So now we're going to just turn to an overview of today's agenda, and I'm going to ask Emily and Amy if they can just walk us through the agenda for today.
Sure, so the first thing.
Oh, and this will also be on the slides in front of you.
Great, so our first item will be our Minister of Social Justice and Community Development, Rev CTC, leading us in remembering those who we hold in memoriam this year. And then Burke will review the board's work over the past year, and Rev Amanda will provide the Senior Minister's report.
Following the Senior Minister's report, then awards and recognition are next, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry, my script is a little bit old. And so we're gonna do the awards and recognition, and then we'll get to the voting matters. After the awards, when we go to the voting matters, starting with the approval of the minutes of last year's annual meeting, which is like the most exciting topic, right? We will present and discuss each of the voting matters, but because we're using one voting session at the end and one voting ballot for everything, rather than voting on them one at a time with a motion and whatnot, we're gonna vote on all of them at once after we've discussed them all. So there'll be a 10-minute break, and then we can vote on them each individually on the ballot after that 10-minute break. And that's going to be after the final discussion period concludes. So this is a way that we make this in-person meeting work with the online voting that we have. And always we prioritize our covenant and our commitment to ensuring that everybody has the opportunity to be heard. So rather than formally calling for motions and seconds on the voting items, we're just going to present them, we're going to open the floor for discussion, and then once we've discussed them all, we'll ask for the vote. And then when we come back, Emily's going to announce the election results and the conclusion of the meeting.
All right. So with that, I'm going to turn to the first agenda item, and I'm going to ask our CTC to come back up for a remembrance of the members that we're holding in memoriam today.
All of our lives, we are in need, and others are in need of us. In this gathered community, our home place, the place where strangers become friends and friends become family, our collective joins as one. Here, when we are connected to each other, to the past, to the present, to the future, we never truly lose one another. But we do lose our friends, and we lose members of the UUCA family. Today, I'm acknowledging 8 people. Let us remember them together as I say each of their names aloud. Will you please say, "We will remember them," following each name. I begin. Richard Barton. We will remember them. Ron Fisher. We will remember them. Grace Metheny Mayer. We will remember them. Randy McKeeman. We will remember them. Bob Morgan. We will remember them. Dot Dorothy Newman. We will remember them. Dean Matthew Powell. We will remember them. John Sutton. We will remember them. As you think of those we have lost, be strong, be well, be loving, and remember, most importantly of all, as we say on Sunday, you are never on this journey alone.
Thank you, Rev CTC. So now it's my turn to speak, and I will present the Board of Trustees annual report. So there was a written report that was included in the meetings that went, the materials that went out for this meeting. And for those of you who may not have had the chance to review that, let me go ahead and hit some highlights. This is going to focus on the board as a whole and the work that it does. The committees that we have, and we have 3 standing committees, have been extraordinarily busy. And so rather than get into all of their work, I would point you to that report. But let me talk about the board as a whole. We had 4 goals this year, which the board decided on for its own work, and they were the following. First, that we wanted to continue to foster connectedness in this community through outreach, so we could figure out who we were and how the board could be of service to UCA. We wanted to support the church through active participation in stewardship and giving campaigns. We wanted to deepen our understanding of anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural approaches so that we could apply those to the board's work. And we wanted to help the UUCA community better understand and respond to the expected changes with the new Article 2 language being proposed and up for a vote this year by the UUA. So we've done some really, really great work this year meeting these goals. And I just want to highlight a few of the achievements that we've had. So first of all, we reestablished the annual church survey. So thank you to all of you who participated. We're still tabulating those results. So if you're saying to yourself, well, where are they? And they're still working. We hope to have some conclusions to share with you soon. P.S. If you are a data scientist or you are experienced with quantitative analysis, come find me after the meeting. Okay. We've done some listening sessions and some meetings on various issues affecting the church. We had one on our right relations policy, which we passed. We've talked about the budget, and then more recently, we had a listening session about Arlington Unitarian Community Preschool and our rental climate. The board actively supported the annual giving campaign. We had a ton of fun at the auction, Mistletoe Mall, and the Chalice Theater. We've continued to deepen the work that we're doing on anti-racism, anti-oppressive, and multiculturalism. We've met twice with the Racial Justice Task Force. We did a self-analysis using an anti-racist rubric, and we read Eddie S. Glaude's Begin Again, which is an intriguing and thoughtful work on James Baldwin and his perspective on racism in contemporary America, which, by the way, I can't recommend highly enough. It's awesome. Board members also co-led a Faith 360 class on the new Article 2 language proposed by the UUA, and that was, I think, revealing. And then in January, we held our second annual Vision of Ministry conference to facilitate a discussion among various lay leaders to talk about an annual vision for next year, for 2024, 2025. And we got one. So we have an annual vision for next year that has 4 elements to it. One is building more on our anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural work. And actually, let me stop for a second to say, this is a vision for UUCA. This is a vision not just for what the board can be doing, but what we as a congregation want to do. And so doing this anti-racism work is an important part toward building our beloved community. This vision also includes developing a messaging strategy, materials, and training that articulate our values to the nones, and I mean N-O-N-E-S, which are folks who, if you ask them what their religious affiliation is, they would say none. And so in order to reach them, to reach young adults and young families, we're thinking about messaging and materials that we can reach out to them with. We want to increase our financial security, including diversifying our income. And we want to strengthen our membership support so that we are a church who cares and rests on personal relationships and differentiated support, meaning that everybody gets what they need, not just what we can provide. This was a lively discussion, and it produced a great vision that lays a framework and a compass point for our work next year. And we intend to continue conducting these sessions each year as part of an annual planning cycle. So in quick sum, in January or February, we do this visioning work. We come up with a statement. And then in March, we use that vision to undertake our annual giving campaign, to get the resources we need to carry it out. And then in May, we do a budgeting exercise to see how we can deploy the resources we have to achieve the vision we laid out. We did that last year, we're doing it again this year, and we'll do it again next year as well. The other work of the boards that I want to highlight is our use of an open question. So this is a practice that follows on advice from Dan Hotchkiss. He is a congregational consultant who's wrote a seminal work on church governance, excuse me, and we are explicitly following his work after the 2019 Governance Task Force. And so Hotchkiss recommends that among all the usual planning and board businesses and budgets and things like that, that each board stop and take time to think deeply and discerningly about an open, broad question. So for us this year, our question was, how does UUCA ensure its long-term sustainability? This work is deeper and less measurable than just goals. But for me, and I think for the board, it's really more interesting as we thought hard about what it means to be sustainable. It also proved challenging because as we explored sustainability, we identified a number of trends that amount to headwinds pushing against our progress. So as you can see from the annual report I provided, and I attached a report that I gave to the annual Vision of Ministry conference, we're seeing sustainability in 2 ways. First is membership sustainability. And what this means is our ability to attract and keep members so that we as a church continue to grow and carry out our mission. Some challenges here are this phenomenon called the Great Dechurching, where people are simply leaving the churches that they grew up in and not coming back. And of course, those nones, N-O-N-E-S, that I mentioned, who are not necessarily drawn to an institutional church as a sole source of spirituality or community, but appear to want both spirituality and community in some form. And so we as the board discussed what we can do to build bridges to these nones and what we can do to attract them here. Financial sustainability is the second aspect of sustainability. And this is our ability to generate the revenue and the resources necessary to sustain our operations and carry out our mission. The major challenges here are that we're seeing a decline in members and we're seeing a decline in pledging by existing members. In short, not only do we have fewer members, but the members we do have are pledging less than before, which is one reason why, for instance, the budget before you today includes projected deficit spending. To address this, we're looking to diversify our income sources and bring in income from alternative places. The ongoing discussions involving our downstairs space and AUCP come out of this goal to increase our rental revenue to something closer to market rent. And I'm pleased that we're making really good progress on those. These are complex questions, and we continue to chart our path as we go. It's possible we may have to consider making changes to aspects of our community we take for granted. In other words, doing things differently or new from what we've done in the past. Still, one thing I do know is that our mission, our place in the world, is good and strong and worth preserving. What do we offer to the world? It's in our mission statement. We offer community, we offer inspiration, and we offer purpose. And these are things we know the world desperately needs. Time after time, this congregation has stepped up to ensure that we can continue to do this work and deliver these parts of a beloved community. And I'm confident we will do so again. Thank you. All right. And now it's time for the Senior Minister report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Burke. And I just want to take this moment to say that yet again, I feel incredibly lucky to work with this board of trustees, with Burke as chair and Barbara Bazell as vice chair. Where's Barbara? And Linda as treasurer. And the whole board is really a dream to work with. So thank you, board, and thank all of you for electing them, and thank you, nominating committee, for bringing these great folks into leadership at UUCA. Like Burke, I also offered a written annual report, though when I say I, really I mean we, which is almost always true at UUCA. If there's something that you think I did, chances are we did it. We, the staff, we, all of us working with volunteers, we, the community and the congregation. There is almost nothing here that happens because of one person alone. And so that annual report was written really by a number of different staff members, each one of them offering reflections on some of the highlights within their portfolio areas over the last year. And I think you saw in there, upkeep and security grants, and you saw programming and OWL, you saw religious education classes, you heard about covenant groups, you learned about our justice work and the funds that go out through Share the Plate and about our little free food pantry. You heard about all of the different ways that we have been building community and finding our way back to each other and forward. You also heard from two of our sort of newer staff members this year in the annual report. One of those, of course, is Jen Heyman, who's our interim music director and who is closing her time with us. And the other is Nicole Haley, who's our congregational engagement manager, who started in January and is not closing her time with us. Thank you very much. It has been really wonderful to have these folks with us this year, and it has been particularly great that since January, since Nicole joined the team, we have been fully staffed for, I think, the first time since I started. I just will tell you that it turns out that makes a difference. And it makes a difference not just in the things that get done, but I think in the way that they get done and in the possibility for engagement across different portfolios and across different ministries. And that's some of what I'm proudest of that the staff has really worked on in this past year is creating intersections and pathways and connections and joint projects supported by people in different areas, which pushes us past the sort of space of siloing, this is my thing, this is your thing, and toward an even deeper understanding that pretty much all of this is our thing when you get right down to it at church. Burke mentioned the annual vision of ministry goals that were created for the coming year. I want to just briefly note the annual vision of ministry goals that we have been operating under this year. So all of us on staff use those goals to help to direct our programming and bring them to the teams that we work with. This year, we have some goals that are going to sound very similar to the ones we have now moving forward. I think that's not a that's not a failure of the goal, that's a recommitment to the goal because it continues to be important. And so one of ours this year was to increase participation in anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multicultural trainings to build a more welcoming community. We saw that through our OUCH trainings that RevCTC put together, originally with Reverend Roberta Finkelstein, actually, who just came in the back. We saw that with, those OUCH trainings are required now for RE teachers and covenant group leaders and other facilitators. We saw that through the LEAD program, which added in a monthly gathering focused specifically around anti-racism and anti-oppression work. That happened in April or May, a month that isn't now. I don't know which month that isn't now, but one of them. I was there. Do you know? We don't know. May. It was May. We saw that through some of our sermons and services, through work that we did as a staff in staff training and retreat. And we absolutely have seen that through the work of the Racial Justice Task Force, who spent a significant amount of time and energy, and I would really say congregational engagement this year, working on its timeline of racial justice history at UUCA, efforts toward anti-racism, including mistakes made and challenges experienced, and then kind of ending with some recommendations and thoughts as we move ahead. So I just want to really lift up and commend their work, and I know that that timeline is just about ready to be sent out and shared with the congregation as a whole, and I'm so grateful for that. A second goal that we've been operating under this year is to center UUCA's programming around Unitarian Universalism's articulated values as expressed in the UUA's foundational documents, inviting UUCA members and friends to study and engage with those values. And that really points to the work around Article 2, the bylaws changes that the UUA is moving forward, which Burke mentioned earlier. We worked that in through services this whole year. And if we zoom out, I think that the larger intent behind that goal was really to invite the congregation to sink in more deeply to the history and theology of Unitarian Universalism. And we have worked very hard to weave that through our services and our adult education, our Faith 360 programming, our children's religious education all through the year. And finally, the third goal we've been operating under is to grow the number of UUCA members and friends who are actively engaged in leadership and volunteering, deepening the sense of connection throughout the congregation. I want to just give a special shout out here to Nikki Steele, our congregational administrator, that's good. I didn't even tell you why we were shouting her out, but I agree. Nikki, who has, in preparation for Nicole Haley joining the team as congregational engagement manager, Nikki really took a fine-tooth comb through our membership database and I would say moved us toward reality, moved us from a database that had a lot of members who were no longer involved in the congregation. Some of them had moved out of the country, right? And some of them simply had moved on in their lives. And yet we were still counting them and imagining that they were here in a way that I think is actually not helpful. So Nikki really moved us toward a realistic understanding of our membership and a smaller membership number size, which then enabled Nicole to come into that congregational engagement manager position into a real understanding of who we are and to build and create from there. You have probably seen some of Nicole's work in engaging volunteers. That has been a real focus for her in the last couple of months. And keep saying yes as you are able. You're going to keep seeing other ways to engage people in. One just really simple success story of that I think is such a great example is we had a outdoor garden work day a couple of months ago, and we had those work days before, and I don't know, Nikki, I feel like we would get 4, 5, 6 people, really dedicated volunteers, they all brought their own tools because they were those kind of people, you know what I mean? I'm looking at you, Marcia Trick. And that was wonderful. But as we move toward that workday, both Matt Connors, our facilities manager, and Nicole Haley both really leaned in on talking about it. Leanne Williams and the whole RE staff talked about it as an opportunity for families to serve. Nicole talked about it with newcomers as a way to get to know other people, not just a way to be of service, but a way to connect. And we had, 20 plus people at that workday, including really brand new folks who did find that it was an experience of connecting beyond Sunday morning. So to me, that's such a beautiful, just a micro example of work across different areas. It was was also sort of named and held as a social justice opportunity with our newcomers, like all of these things that came together around this one little event and really changed how it showed up within the congregation's life. So I just offer that as one of many examples as we move forward. I think I just really want to end with gratitude, and particularly with gratitude for the rest of the staff that I feel so honored to work with and to serve with here at UUCA. I know not all of the staff, but many of the staff are here, so I want to invite you to just stand in this moment, if you will, and I want to invite the rest of you to say thank you to our wonderful staff.
So thank you, Reverend Amanda. And now I'm turning it back over to you for awards. This is the fun part. There you go.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Burke. I appreciate that interlude. That really moved us through very well. Thank you. Let's see. This is the fun part. I love it so much. Okay, so Cameron, could you move us forward? Skip the budget pieces, because I'm going to come back to those. Just keep moving us forward. Forward, 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 forward. Yay! Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Kudos to, is it Cameron and is that Art back there? I can't tell if it's the top of Art's head or what's it? It's Art's head, who are always so great at managing often rather last minute requests. So I appreciate that very much. Okay. I'm so excited for these awards, and I have them listed here, and I realize now that I've sort of spoiled the surprises, so I don't know. Close your eyes, everybody. But really, to me, what is more exciting than the surprise is just the opportunity to get to recognize these amazing folks. And so I'm going to ask Leanne to start us off. As she comes forward with, Niharika is just going to sit there like she doesn't know she's about to be called up. We're hilarious, y'all. Okay.
We just roll with it like that. We just roll with it like that. Thank you. Hey, everybody. So this year, our Religious Education Award goes to Niharika Joe. So come on up, Niharika. And I am really, really excited to present this to Niharika just for all the ways that you have served religious education. And I just want to highlight your ministry involves not just our children. Niharika has taught our 7th grade class now for years, but also has helped support our adult programming as well in many ways. And really want to highlight, Niharika, how you helped hold space and in your role on the RE committee during the pandemic and helping us create ways to keep our 7th graders connected, which was no small feat. So for all those things, Niharika, thank you. Just, oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. So I love this idea of unsung hero because it's those folks who are just doing the work and not expecting anything. They're just doing it because they just love doing it. And since I've started, a few of those folks have stood out to me in a very special way. Jim Terpstra, I do not think is here, but I still would love to raise his name in the room for the energy that he has committed over from what I'm learning and also from what I've experienced with him over time. So he has always been willing to support. He taught me some things. I would go to him for questions. If it's one thing that he wanted me to remember was that he has been here many years and he's seen things literally built from the bottom up. And I just want to really acknowledge him because he's become very special to me, and I know that you've all experienced him in a way as well. So let's just give Jim a hand. And then I'm a little greedy, and I was thinking of other people who also should receive this. So a wonderful, wonderful couple has always stood out to me. They showed me protocol. They answered my questions when I was completely confused, but they've completely just shown me the way and also has been such a beautiful light for this whole congregation. So Gail and Frank Brown, I just wanted to honor you. If you can come up, please. Thank you. Always willing to step in and volunteer. And from what I understand, also, you are very heavily involved in the fall retreat and has just always been present and willing to help. So I just wanted to present you with this as well. And they both say the same thing, so there you go. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I just especially love that, Nicole, because Frank and Gail are actually relatively new members, just a couple of years, right? And so I am especially moved by the experience of their always being present. It's a beautiful example of the way that we are new and recreated every single time somebody joins our community. I love that, thank you. I hope too that folks will, if you see Jim, give him a congratulations because he does know about the award, and that would be lovely. Okay, I get to give out the Lightness of Being Award, which is named for the Reverend Joan Galbine, who was minister and then minister emerita here at UUCA, and who I did not have the privilege to meet, but who I understand brought a sense of joy and connection and dance and playfulness into her ministry. And I am so delighted. I'm going to ask Tommy Lowe and Amy Stock to come forward. Tommy and Amy are yes people. In fact, Amy on a call recently was sharing an idea and said, I may regret telling you this, but here's an idea we had. And she may regret it, but we're definitely doing that idea. Tommy and Amy are yes people. They are also people that bring to their joyfulness a really deep grounding in community. Tommy and Amy don't play because it's fun to play. They play because they know that play connects us to each other. And I think that really came through in the dance. All of the ways that the dance this year had opportunities for connection. So I'm going to read to you what it says on here, and then I'll let you applaud again. Tommy Lowe and Amy Stock bring a spirit of joy and connection to all they do, from the Spring Fling dance to the Ted Lasso Covenant Group, to praying for bunnies at the pet blessing service, to joining the care team. Although Tommy and Amy are in fact two different people, we have confirmed that, it is difficult to think of one without the other. They model connection, commitment, and fun. So I hope you can join me in congratulating and thanking Tommy and Amy.
Isn't this the best, giving out awards? So the award that I'm giving out is the Joseph Fisher Social Justice Award. This is going to Tom O'Reilly. Would you please come forward? Sometimes you run into a person when you get a new job who immediately says, "You're going to need something. When you do, let me know." This is the person that said that to me when I joined you all back in August of 2021, and it continues to be true. I'll read this to you. Tom O'Reilly is a bit like Mary Poppins. He is uber positive, has a can-do attitude, and instead of saying no when a task is challenging, he figures out exactly how to get things done. Like Ms. Poppins, he is practically perfect in every way. Even when dealing with a bum knee, he simply shows up. He shows up for climate justice. He shows up to help provide food for our neighbors. He shows up repeatedly, year after year, introducing and reintroducing our congregation to the Arlington community via his work with Chalice Theater. I am pleased to lift up his contributions to our collective, and I present him with this 2024 Joseph Fisher Community Services Award. Mary Poppins.
I'm very excited for Tom to wear a Mary Poppins hat. I'm just putting that request in now, and I feel like I have a pretty good chance of getting it, actually. Well, extra bonus for me, Jen Heyman, our interim music director, is on a family gathering this week, and so asked if I would present the Vera Tilson Music Award on her behalf. And I'd like to invite Jeff Robbins to come forward so that I can present it. You all may think that Jeff is receiving this award because of the beautiful piano music that we so often hear from him, and that is certainly part of it, but you may not be aware of the myriad ways that Jeff supports the music program, the choir in particular, and has supported the music director search team in these past months. So let me read what Jen wrote. Jeff Robbins for his enthusiasm, joyful participation, and stalwart volunteer service of the church's music program through his fabulous piano skills as soloist, accompanist, and band member, library filing, copying, general herding of cats, and his deep commitment to selecting the best music director for the future of UUCA through his participation in the Music Search Committee. And I will just say that that selecting that music director meant that Jeff and I spent many, many hours on Zoom together over the last couple of months, along with other folks on the team. Phyllis, I see here, and Rev CTC was there for many of those. But it just was always a pleasure to have Jeff's thoughtfulness, his really gentle, clear questions, and his significant clarity about what UUCA needed in the music program as we moved forward. So I am so grateful to you, Jeff. Thank you so much for that, and I invite you to show your appreciation.
So I get to get on this one. And this year's chair award is going to two people, Betsy Rosso and Tracy Butler Johnson. I think I saw Betsy, come on up. And I think Tracy is not able to join us. So obviously we're in Pride Week, and so this award is going to Tracy and to Betsy for their work. And actually, I'll just go ahead and read this, because I wrote it, actually. All right, so, which is to say, it's for the work in organizing and presenting at UUCA the Queer and Questioning Awareness and Acceptance, or QA2 conference that gathered organizations and individuals that support, advocate for, and celebrate LGBTQIA+ children and youth. This gathering expanded on and grew out of Tracy and Betsy's ongoing work as the co-leaders of a covenant group for parents of gender-expansive youth, which serves UUCA families in the larger UUCA families and families in the larger community. UCA has long been a welcoming home for the LGBTQIA+ community, and this conference showed that we extend that welcome to even its youngest members. In a world that seems all too eager to draw lines that exclude queer and questioning youth, this event provided crucial inclusion, care, and hope. So congratulations to Betsy and to Tracy. Congratulations. This one's for you. Oh, got it. Cool. Congratulations.
And Betsy, what's the date of next year's expo? It's Saturday, October 5th. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It was more like, guess what, everybody? It's Saturday, October 5th. Okay. Our final award is an award for distinguished service, and I always hesitate with this award because I think I said something similar last year. I want to make clear that this does not absolve the person of service in the future. So, sorry, Mary. However, it does celebrate someone at UUCA who has given of their time, of their energy, of their heart, through, in all likelihood, sweat and tears, because the truth is that giving in a congregational context, showing up and leading in a congregational context is not always easy. That they have given to UUCA in different roles and over a significant period of time. And when we put together these particular awards, we're often trying as a staff to pull together, like, what has this person done over time? And gosh, Mary, I know I did not get it all here. But I hope that we got, like, I don't know, 40 to 50% is my goal. Because Mary has shown up in so many ways at UUCA. I will read what we managed to put together. For Mary Pike, for her many years of service to UUCA in so many ways, as the first face visitors see at the welcome desk, as a board member, as a supporter of both UUCA and the wider community, as chair of the Holiday Craft Fair, so that's as a cultivator of lay leadership on the nominating committee, as a covenant group facilitator and strategy team member, as an RE and OWL teacher, an adult education facilitator, and of course, as a model in the tattoo exhibit. Mary, will you come forward so we can thank you?
I'm also informed that Mary also is the head of the poker group too. So that was
So sorry to
that was an inadvertent omission from the certificate. So one more round of applause for all of the folks who have received awards. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So now we're going to move to the voting items on our agenda. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Amy and to Emily to walk us through that process. So Amy, do you want to start?
Okay, so I previously mentioned that the way we're going to do this is through our commitment to the congregational, covenant, and in a way that we maximize inclusion and ensure that all voices are heard. So the best way to do that, given that we have also the electronic voting, is that we're going to have each item that is on the ballot to be voted on. We're just going to discuss it, move on to the next item, discuss it, move on to the final item, discuss it, and then we'll break for voting where you can vote on each item individually if you haven't already. So we're going to do that in a way that makes sure that things make sense and is inclusive but not overly formal. So after each topic is introduced, we're just going to open the floor for comments or questions on that item, and then we'll do that for each item as we break then to vote on all the items after we've presented and discussed everything.
All right. For the discussion periods, if you are a UUCA member entitled to vote and would like to speak, you can join a line down either of the side aisles to one of the two microphones. I don't see microphones yet.
We'll get a microphone.
We will get microphones for you in those places. For those members who are not physically in the sanctuary, we invite you to participate in the discussion by writing in the YouTube comments as usual. Amy will be online and able to read out your question or comment. Yeah, okay. Nikki, thank you for being online and watching the chat on YouTube for anyone joining us online. We'll treat any comments that come in online as the third line of questioners, and we'll alternate among the 3 lines until all key points have been covered. Amy will call on those who have not yet spoken on an item before calling on anyone who wishes to speak for the second time. As we share any comments, let's remember that all discussion will be done within UUCA's congregational covenant, including to speak the truth directly and with compassion, to reflect carefully about the potential results of our words and actions before we speak and act, and to keep our discussions to topics and issues rather than personalities.
Okay, so we are going to take a hot second where you guys want to use this mic and like maybe set it there, and I'll go stand by Burke, or do you gonna use those? We're figuring it out. Okay. While they figure that out, we'll continue. Okay, so here's how the comment period is going to work. So in order to ensure that we have an opportunity to benefit from everybody's input that wants to speak, I really like what Reverend Amanda said about this creating a space for everyone. And that's all the timing is about. It's not intended to control what people are saying or like cut people off. It's just about making sure that everybody has a chance to speak in the time that we have. So we're going to all need to limit our comments to 2 minutes or less. And I'm going to be keeping track of the time, so you don't need to worry about it. And for each person, I'm going to, when you have 30 seconds left in your 2 minutes, I'll hold this up. And when you have 10 seconds left, I'll hold this up. And this kind of means like wrap up your sentence, because not your thought, because your thought will take longer than you think, and so will your sentence. So then when 2 minutes is up, I'm going to give you one gentle ring, and then I'm gonna go woo, and then I'm gonna say time if it's 10 seconds after that. So it escalates, in case you didn't notice. And like I said, we're asking that everybody kind of do this fairly for each other and respect these limits. That's just part of how we all can work together and discuss things. And I hate having to escalate to time. So just be mindful of the time signals. And conclude everything once you see that 10 seconds left. Emily?
And one more thing for those online, if you hear something already mentioned that covers the question that you've entered in the chat, go ahead and just put your name and withdrawn so that we know we don't need to read out your question and repeat the same question or topic.
Okay, and when we have concluded the last discussion period for the last voting item, we're going to take that 10-minute recess that we mentioned, and that's when anybody who hasn't voted can go at home or here can go online to the link that was provided in the email from Election Buddy. If you haven't voted yet, an email reminder was sent, so it should be at the top of your box, and after inbox, and after 10-minute recess, we'll come back.
Okay. Everyone clear? Follow all that. Okay. So with that overview, we're going to move to the first item on our voting agenda, or on our first item for voting, which is approval of the minutes from our prior congregational meeting. This is the meeting on June 11th, 2023, our last annual meeting. So Emily?
Thanks, Burke. So the notice of the meeting was sent to all members with several attachments, and those included an attachment of the minutes from last year's June 11th, 2023 annual meeting.
Great. We're going to now open the discussion period on the minutes from the last annual meeting in 2023. We've scheduled a whole 10 minutes for this. I think we're ready for anybody who has comments or questions on the minutes, and we'll start with comments or questions from anyone in the sanctuary. So does anyone have any comments or questions here on the minutes from last year's annual meeting? Okay, I don't see any comments or questions, so I'm going to see, are there any comments or questions on the YouTube channel, Nikki?
Comments or questions?
No comments or questions. Okay, great. So with that, I'm actually going to conclude our discussion on this item. We don't need.
Good job, everybody.
Very good. Very good. We scheduled 10 minutes, but we don't have to use 10 minutes, people. So we'll move on to the next voting item. Now we're talking about the budget. So I'm going to ask Linda Battolini, who is our current and outgoing treasurer, to present the treasury report, and then Reverend Amanda will present the budget for this year, next year.
So I'm looking for the treasurer's report slides.
going.
There we go.
Da-da-da.
Oh,
So fancy,
that's
Linda.
nice.
Right? You made it.
I didn't know there was a fade involved. So- All right, so we can go to the first slide. All right, so we're here to talk about the current budget year, which is the 23-24 budget year. And this year, we began with a budget that predicted, if you look at the last column, that's our full year operating budget for 23-24. And we budgeted for a deficit of $89,000 this year. And so through April of 2024, these are the results that we have gotten so far. And the first line is the pledges, contributions, and revenue that we have collected this year. And as you can see, the actual is $1,195,000. Budget was a little higher than that, so we're below budget on our revenue for this year. And we're below from all sources about 3%, but from pledges and contributions, even after allowing for a 5% uncollectible on the pledges that we got a year ago, we're still another 6% below what we had budgeted. And we've seen this through most of the year, except in December. And so we still have a couple of months left, and we know we get a surge in contributions toward the end of the year. And Nikki has sent out your statements recently. So we usually do wind up doing a lot of catch-up between now and year end. So keep that in mind if any of you have forgotten that we're approaching year end. So we are under budget and on that, but we're also under budget on expenses, on the expense side. So we're $64,000 below budget on our expenses, and that's due to what Reverend Amanda was talking about earlier, which is that we were not fully staffed until January. But since January, almost every month, we have been generating a deficit because our pledge payments are lagging, but our expenses are fully at the budget level. So for actual year to date, because we had lower expenses for the first 6 months of the year, we had a surplus building up. And so year to date, we have a deficit of $10.4 thousand. I was going to say million. No, that's not right. I'm in the wrong business, right? And we had budgeted $36.7 thousand of a deficit. So between now and the end of the year, we expect to maybe be about a $50,000 or $60,000 deficit if we keep to the budget that we have for the next 2 years. And that budget has been seasonally adjusted, so it does anticipate a surge in payments and contributions. So that's this year. Okay, good. Good job, Cameron. So as we look at our revenue in a little more detail, I think it's really important that in a time when our membership was declining and post-pandemic, our pledges, the blue bars on this chart, pledges were pretty constant, even though our membership was going down. So to me, we haven't done a detailed study on this, but my interpretation of this is that our current members are stepping up. When we make appeals and we need more revenue like we did last year and the year before, our members have stepped up and have been very generous. But it's an increasing burden of expense on a flat membership base is not sustainable. And so that's why we as a board have been focused on looking at our sources of revenue and looking for new ways to bring revenue back to the church. But at the same time during this period, it's the orange bars are the amount we collected each year for the capital campaign. So we may have concerns about these blue bars, but meanwhile, the members of this church have been extremely generous, and we've been able to pay off our mortgage. So our strength, our financial strength is so much better than we were
4 or 5 years ago. Even though we're coming through the pandemic, we have fewer members, but our existing membership base is really devoted to this church, and I think deserves a lot of recognition for that. So the things that we need to focus on in the near future is really rebuilding our membership base and saying, can this membership base support all the expenses associated with this church? And that is the staff expenses for our programs, but then the building expenses, which are pretty significant. And so that's why we're looking to diversify our sources of income and look more at the opportunity for more rental income. So the next slide. So this is, it didn't turn out the way on my paper. Okay, so this is our history of rental revenue through the pandemic. And you can see when we had to close the building, we lost rental revenue. And we've been rebuilding back toward where we were in 2019. But during that time period, inflation was about 23%. So we have to do better than that. I mean, and this is a relatively small base of rental revenue compared to our total expenses. So this is helpful, and it really has made a big difference this year in terms of our financial, not going even further into a deficit than we have had to go so far. And the second last bar there is a 2024 budget, and the last bar is our year-to-date through only 10 months of the year. So kudos to the staff. There's Annie back there. Yeah. And Nikki. Yeah. And Jose, that there's just a ton of work that goes into supporting all the rentals and all the people that are in and out of this building to generate this kind of rental income. And it's working. It's really working. But we do know that there are other opportunities. And to look at how our space is utilized and how it could be utilized more fully in a reliable way to generate even more rental revenue. And that's why the board is talking to AUCP about moving more toward more fully using our space and a market-based rent. So this is the exciting slide for those of you who are financially oriented, because, and I want to credit Chad Oland for this model, because I found this from an old treasurer's report that Chad had put together, and I like this structure. So this shows that when we're managing the business of the church, cash is king, basically, in any organization, but particularly in a church kind of organization. We're kind of on a cash basis with our financials. And we need to be watching how much cash we have, because we need to pay people. We need to pay our utilities. That's really what's the measure of how we're doing financially. And we're not trying to please shareholders. We don't have a quarterly bottom line we have to deliver on. You're our stakeholders, and you're here to fund our vital mission. Or we're here to fund the vital mission of this church, as Burke and Amanda have so nicely outlined. So when we look for whether we can pay our expenses, we look to 3 buckets that hold the cash related to our mission. We have a checking account. That's that first set of numbers. We have a set of reserves that back up our operation, and we have our endowment savings account, we call it. It's not the kind of endowment where you have to go to a bank to get approval to take money out. We have access to that money to back up our operations. So and the checking account is where you see the impact of the deficits that we've generated in this year, as well as the cost of doing some of the capital improvements that don't show up in our surplus or deficit. And you can see that we've lost about $44,000. So we have a cash base at this point in time that's lower than it was a year ago because of the deficits. So people say, what's the impact of a deficit on the church? Well, this is where it shows up, is in our checking account. Can I speak louder? Okay, Nancy, thanks. So we have these reserves then. We have reserve accounts that are invested in Fidelity, various Fidelity accounts. And we have an operating reserve. We have a reserve for capital replacements. And we have a reserve that's designated. Now, many of you are involved in activities that have these designated funds, like the retreat. The retreat we have a designated fund for the fall retreat. We have a designated fund for social justice work. We have a designated fund for youth activities. And these are this money that people have collected that we hold, and we have committed to keep that cash so that when people need it for their programs, it's available. And so that is about 150,000. Oh no, it's about close to 200,000. And so these reserves are pretty significant, but we do have a claim on them for various reasons. And the capital replacement reserve is just a very shallow bucket for a very deep need. But it is there, and it's something that we can rely on to back up our operations in our checking account. The third bucket is our endowment. And we've really benefited this year particularly, both in terms of the contributions that have been made to pay off the capital campaign pledges, as well as the market. The market has turned around and is doing a little bit better. So we look at the endowment in two ways. First, we have what's with the UUCEF, which is the Unitarian Universalist Common Endowment Fund. And that is a socially responsible, thank you, Mary, socially responsible investment fund. And they have an incredible board of people in Boston who are financial executives and who are leaders in social justice work. And so they're guiding the investments in that fund, and we have devoted the major portion of our endowment to that investment vehicle. We also have been collecting capital campaign contributions, and because of the weakness of our basic cash position, we have not paid it over into the UUCEF, but we do designate it, and we look at it each month and we say, we're not going to touch that if we don't have to. But if we keep generating deficits, we will have to use that money. But it is a backup, and it's very liquid, and it gives us peace of mind at the board level. So the bottom line of all of this is that we have almost $190,000 in cash in various buckets than we had a year ago. And that's the capital campaign, it's the market growth that we've gotten with our investments. So we're in a pretty comfortable overall position, but it's just our month-to-month position could be stronger. So then finally, so just as a report on the capital campaign, we have about $325,000 left to collect. Again, and the $500,000 we borrowed from the endowment to pay off the mortgage, we have collected $419,000 of that $500,000. So that's a huge accomplishment. Hats off. Hats off. Yeah. Yeah. And 98,000 of that was this year. So maybe in the next year or so, we will actually complete that commitment that we made to ourselves a few years ago when we finished the capital campaign. So any questions about where we are financially?
By the way, we will have an actual discussion on the budget as well. So,
yes, this is just where we are this year, and Reverend Amanda is going to cover where we're headed the next year. Any questions? Well, thanks for your attention, and thanks for your support.
Thank you to Linda. So and actually a very special thanks to Linda for years of board service. So Linda's been on the board as long as I've been here, and she's been a vice chair, she's been the chair, she taught me what I know. She's now the treasurer, and this is Linda's last year on the board. So she is moving on. She's moving on and has done amazing work in guiding the church and then bringing you, like, for example, this detailed presentation on where we are down to the penny. So a special thanks to Linda, please. So with that, I'm going to invite Reverend Amanda up to talk about the budget for next year. Reverend Amanda.
Thank you so much, Burke. I appreciate that. I joke that Linda carries a calculator like in a holster. And indeed, I don't know who is going to do that anymore. It's really a challenge. So I'm watching our new treasurer coming in. We get it's like a belt or a fanny pack maybe. Just be prepared. Thanks, Dan. Thank you so much. Cameron anticipated where I was going to want to go back to. So hopefully you have all read in detail, probably you've written like poems about it, the budget narrative that was sent out with your materials. And some of you, I know, went to one of our 2 budget forums. If you went to a budget forum, will you just raise your hand and be like, it was so fun? Just say it like really loud, like, it was so fun. I really appreciate folks that take the time to do that and to engage with our budgeting process. I know it's actually pretty easy to just sort of be like, I think people are taking care of things, and they are. And your commitment, engagement, your concerns and worries, your questions, and then your support as we move forward are really vital. So I'm not going to offer the entirety of the presentation I created for the budget forum. If you want that, you're going to have to go to a budget forum next year. There's even more slides. However, I'll give you a couple of slides here, which overviews the budget that we are proposing. So the biggest headline is that this budget does include a deficit, and it is a larger deficit than last year, and that is the latest in a series of deficits, as you've kind of heard from Linda. Some of those deficits were saved by swoop-ins from government grants and employee retention credits and things like that during the pandemic, but prior to COVID and prior to my arrival here, the church was operating under deficits that related to its mortgage payments or just its general operating budget. So we know that this has been kind of a long-standing problem for the congregation, and it's one that we need to move forward out of as we go forward. You've actually already heard some of this from Linda, because when we create a budget, we start first by looking at where we are this year. So exactly what Linda just offered to you, where are we this year? And then we use that to help us make our best guesses for the coming year. And so we have budgeted next year's pledge revenue to be lower than this year because of where we've ended up this year. However, we've also budgeted rental revenue to be significantly higher. And again, that's based on our experience this year. And just another shout out to Annie and Nikki for their incredible work. I also want to shout out to Jason and Chris and Jose, who are in the building often welcoming people, directing them, making sure that they find where they need to be. I want to shout out to Jose, who this year was promoted to head custodian after Manuel retired. And who, I think one reason we don't expect our building expenses to be so high is because our building looks great. And that is thanks to Jose and Matt and Nikki and the entire, and Chris, the entire building team that cares for our building. And I also want to shout out to Nicole and to Katie, who together have really been doing work in sort of their different ways, collaborating on some of the messaging in our building, including, like, you'll see some newcomer welcome to UUCA bulletin boards. That's actually relevant for our renters as well, that when they come in our space, they have a sense of who we are and feel invited to participate in other ways. And we do see that with rentals, a variety of different rentals. I had somebody on Sunday who said they were here because they were at the Ecstatic Dance rental, which is was a new rental for us, and they thought it seemed cool, and they came on Sunday morning. So, great connections there. Our staff expenses are up modestly in next year's budget. The majority of that is because it does include a 3.5% COLA, cost of living adjustment that's tied to the Consumer Price Index. And a couple of other small adjustments. And then our functional expenses, so think of that as utilities, envelopes, the copier, right? Our functional expenses, RE program materials, all of those things are kept relatively flat in next year's budget. And Nikki and Eric, our financial advisor, worked really hard to keep those flat. That's not going to be able to continue multiple years out, but they were able to do so in the next budget. Thanks so much, Cameron. Read my mind. So here is a high-level summary. This should be familiar to you because you looked at all your meeting materials ahead of time. And it just gives you some numbers looking back a year, our current year, and then the proposed budget for next year. And you do see that that deficit is increasing as we go forward. And you see some of the other changes, places where things are pulled from memorial gifts and from reserves. The reserves pull is mostly for HVAC expenses. Our HVAC breaks down in rotation. They just like whisper to each other, "Activity room, it's your turn." So some of that will come from reserves. I want to note on the memorial gifts that those are, you cannot budget for memorial gifts that you have not received yet, obviously. And so those are based on memorial gifts that have been already received. And then we'll go to the next slide. Thank you so much. Noting again that the deficits are only comfortable in the very short term. I was talking about this with a colleague recently and came up with a phrase that I found helpful, which is that we do not have an immediate budget crisis. We have an existential budget crisis, however. And we have to solve, oh, Chad liked it. Oh, I'm excited. And I don't think Chad likes it, but the phrase. And we have to solve the existential budget crisis. So even while the board and I, in service to the board and in service to the congregation, are asking you to pass this budget and to move forward with this, we're also inviting you into the larger conversation about how we solve the existential budget crisis within the community. I want to note that, so you can see sort of some of the elements of that existential budget crisis here. Expenses will not stay flat. They will continue to increase. Inflation is not going down, right? We know that. We want to be able to pay our staff fairly. Our reserves are limited. We do, we are, as Burke and Linda both referenced, are in conversations, the board is in conversations with Arlington Unitarian Cooperative Preschool, with AUCP, about the classroom space, and that is one movement forward toward resolving some of the challenges that we're facing and toward moving toward our balanced budgets. The market rate rent that we think we could receive for the classroom space is something like $150,000. You can see that the current rent that we receive is about $30,000 from AUCP. You can see that the difference there is significant and actually connects sort of coincidentally with the deficit this year. And I just really want to commend both the board and AUCP for continuing through some really difficult conversations, really emotional conversations, conversations that are rooted both in history and also in future. And it's really hard to hold both of those things at the same time, I think, the history and the future. I got a lot of questions about where we are with this during the budget forum, so I do want to just address it briefly so that folks kind of know where things stand at this time. The board and AUCP's leadership, so that's AUCP's board and director, are in continuing conversations. One of the requests that the board received was for so AUCP already has one more year in their lease, and that nothing would change that. That is baked into the lease, and that's at the current rent. So this budget includes $30,000 essentially as the rent from AUCP. That's already set. One of the things that AUCP communicated to the board that would be really important and necessary would be an additional year at UUCA, during which time they either would try to figure out, and they are already doing work on this, how they might somewhat significantly change their programming and how they approach things so that they could reach that market or close to that market rate rental, and we could move forward in partnership together. Or during that additional year, so again, we're talking not about next year, but the next year, during that additional year, they would have the time to figure out where else they could be if they were keeping their program as is, where else they could offer that program at the rental rate that they currently have under the current lease. And so the board and AUCP have been talking about that first, that one additional year request, and that conversation is really moving forward. It's not complete, so I don't want to share beyond what is ready, but it's moving forward. And then they're talking about sort of then what paths emerge from there. So all of that is very much in conversation, and I think we don't know the ultimate end, but I just really appreciate the way that people have returned to tables and been in conversation, and I commend the board for that. I commend AUCP for that, and people really holding what it is that each party needs and whether there are places where those needs can meet. That additional year that's being talked about right now would be at sort of an in-between rent, in between the current rent and the market rate rent. So that's where the conversation is just living right now. Just wanted to give people that update because it is sort of weekly unfolding. I mean, every week. I don't mean like it's strongly unfolding week by week. And then we just note that the endowment continues. So even though we are moving forward with some of those rental pieces, that is not a full solution to where we want to be as a congregation and how we can move towards sustainability. And so in the fall, I think you can expect to see and be invited into a listening campaign, a conversation, with as many small groups or individual conversations as possible, so that we can talk together about where we want to go and whether we can resource where we want to go as a congregation. So I really hope that you will watch for that invitation and participate in it. I think that's all I want to say about the budget at this point, although I'm very happy to take questions. And just remember, those budget forums are a good time. Oh, you do that.
I'll do this part. You do that part. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So we're now going to open up the discussion period on the budget. We've scheduled about 15 to 20 minutes to talk about this. But again, like we did with the minutes, we'll focus on the content. So if we don't have extensive questions, we can conclude this period a little earlier than that. Let me ask, does anyone in the sanctuary have any comments or questions about the budget? Victor, come on up.
Any part there.
Hey Cameron, can you put this little one on? So, is that cool? He's getting it. Oh. He got it. It's on now. That's right. It's an annual operating budget, so we don't include capital expenses within the annual budget. We do track upcoming capital expenses. That was actually a question in one of the budget forums, sort of what is coming down the pike. And my answer was something along the lines of, well, there are parts of the building that are 60 years old and will continue to need repair. And there's nothing that we are currently biting our nails about. Like we don't look at the roof every time it rains. The last congregation I served, literally it would rain on the chancel. I'm not kidding, before we replaced the roof. So I actually know what it's like when you're biting your nails about the roof.
So we handle capital expenses at this point sort of as needed, that we may pull from capital reserves for something that is really ultimately a capital expense, but we don't budget for it in the operating budget.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wonder if folks are moving in the direction of doing something about solar electricity on our upward.
Great question, Chris. Thank you so much. Another popular question from the budget forums. What I would say is I believe, so the CCAT, which is the Climate Change Action Team, true? Is that what it's called?
CAT.
Climate Action Team. It's just meow, the cat, meow. Okay, I'll remember that now. The Climate Action Team is working on a multi-year plan for recertification as a green sanctuary and moving towards a significant sort of improvements, which will include an audit in general of our practices. I anticipate, frankly, that there will likely be a proposal coming from the CAT around solar. I don't have that proposal now, and maybe there won't be a proposal coming because maybe there's too many trees. I don't know. I don't install solar panels. So that's where that is. The right people are thinking about it, is what I would say. And then if and when it were to come forward, we would consider it from a budget perspective and see what was possible.
Hi, it's Roseanne Renteria. I was wondering about safety on our facility here, particularly cameras. So I work at a school where we do have a few cameras set up, so we invest in that camera safety procedure. I'm concerned about, again, the way that people come into our area and they destroy what we value. So not for the next budget, but moving forward, we may want to consider some kind of a safety protocol and the cost to invest on cameras close to our facility so that we keep a level of safety when we're coming to service, when we're not at service, and just helping us to feel like we're going to be okay when we're here as well.
100%, and I actually have great news, which is that Annie and Nikki and Matt have been working for a couple of years now to apply for and then to receive a series of grants from the Homeland Security Department around safety for houses of worship, and there's a particular focus on houses of worship that live their values out loud, right? Which, thank goodness, is us. And so we are in the midst of administering the funds of this latest grant, which we have received the grant, and I believe that you'll see there was a new fence put around the playground. That was one piece. The cameras are going up in, is it July? Sometime. Hoping in the fall. In the fall. We do have cameras built into that grant and expect to put them up in the fall, I guess, so that we'll have exactly what you're talking about, some security on the outside of our building, and I think that's going to be awesome. We've already upgraded the lighting in many of our outdoor areas, and so a number of those things are in process. Thank you so much, Roseanne.
Any other questions from within the sanctuary? Yes.
Hi, Lavona Groh. I have a question regarding plate totals. In the budget, it's been 22 through now. It's kind of the same level. And I'm just wondering in terms of actuals, and then how also under operating expenses related to that would be the social justice via the plate. You know, it's 56, 56, 56. I'm wondering kind of actual and the affiliations. How do those break out?
100%. I think I can do most of those. I can answer most of that. So I actually just last week received sort of our updated actuals for Share the Plate contributions this year. Keep in mind that that certainly doesn't include June, and I'm I think it included May, but it maybe has, there's always a delay with getting actuals in. But anyway, it was at 70,000. So we're going to be in above budget this year in terms of share the plate contributions. We sort of kept that collection relatively stable in this budget from last year's budget, but then saw a higher amount. So that's exciting and awesome. In terms of the affiliations and how we budget for that, so one of the shifts that we made when I came on board was rather than funding our dues, essentially, there are several organizations that we are a member of. It's not that we partner with them or we like them, but we are a member organization of those organizations. Rather than funding that through the Share the Plate, we built it and wrapped it into our budget. Some of that was happening, but not all of it, as I understand it. And so that includes Voice, it includes NISQA, it includes UUSJ, and then we make a small contribution to Black Lives for Unitarian Universalism as well, as congregational support to that institution. So those are all funded within the budget, and they're essentially kept at flat levels this year from last year, what that dues is to the organization. Did I get your question, Lavona? Was that helpful? You want the breakout by organization, what the dues is to each organization? I think Nikki can get that to you. So we have, how many line items in our budget? Over 400 line items in our budget, which is why we do not provide you with 400 line items. We do collapse it for you, right? But if you have a specific question on something, we're happy to get you that information. So you could follow up with Nikki, can give you the breakdown of how those, how the dues are funded for each of those. I think Voice is 14,000, 15,000. Thank you, Linda. And NISC was in the 3 or 4K range, if I recall correctly, and UUSJ is in the 1K range. So that's just my but Nikki can get you the specifics.
Any other questions from folks in the sanctuary? Nikki, I have a question that we received online prior to the meeting, and the question, I think, refers to a line in the budget presentation. This is from Mike Hall, and he asks, what is the trigger for, quote, we cannot keep doing deficit budgets, end quote? So I guess the question is, what is that trigger? When do we stop taking deficit budgets?
I think that's a really good question. I mean, there is not a single answer because it has to do with the comfort level of the board and the membership and me as we create together. So just a heads up on our budgeting process is generally that the board communicates budgeting priorities to me. I then work with Nikki and Eric. They do sort of the logistical administrative work of creating the budget. They give me a draft to look at first. We talk it through. That draft then goes to the Board Finance Audit Committee. And then we make changes based on the BFAC's feedback to the budget, and then it goes to the board. And if the board has changes to make, we make those changes, or if the board is comfortable, we move forward. So it's a little tricky to answer because I do think it's a comfort level question. Obviously, there's some answer would be we run out of cash, if we can't cover. So that's where Linda's treasurer's report is really important, because it does sort of the individual budget fits within a larger context of our financial picture. And I think that's why we find ourselves in a not immediate budget crisis, but an existential budget crisis. It's because of the larger picture that we don't have an immediate one. I don't know, I feel like, I don't mean to be hedging, but I do think that it is a question of comfort level as we move forward.
Right, and I think I would just add to that from the board's perspective, like that is a discussion that we've been engaging in for years. It's a discussion we engaged in this year in preparing this budget. And so I think we would have to evaluate and see where we are. We'd have to see, yeah, go ahead.
Cameron, could you pop on, oh, yep, you've got it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's working.
Yeah.
I think it's also, no, did I remember what I was going to say? Oh, there we go. As we look at, oh, I know, I remember now. As we look at the budget is more than just a financial document, it's also a plan. Mm-hmm. And I think this year, one of the reasons the board was comfortable with the budget generating that kind of deficit is that there's a plan behind it. You heard Amanda talk about getting into more relational meetings in the fall, listening to the congregation about what needs to be done, building up our membership initiatives, and understanding our membership better with the survey. Those are initiatives that gave the board comfort that we may be budgeting a deficit, but that we have a plan to turn around our financial situation. We can't just keep spending this money if we're not turning around our situation. And to me, that's the answer to this question.
Very good. Last call for questions from the sanctuary. Okay. Nikki, are there any questions on YouTube? No questions on YouTube. Okay. So that will conclude our discussion for the budget item. We're going to move on to our third and final voting item, which is presentation of the 2024-2025 slate of nominees for the Board of Trustees, the officers, nominating committee members, and General Assembly delegates. And for that, I'm going to ask Mary to come back up to the front and introduce the nominating committee to introduce that slate.
Woohoo! Mary, nominating committee!
You can?
Thanks, Burke. First of all, the nominating committee is not just me, so I want to acknowledge the rest of us. Pat Bodnar, Nancy Hyde, Ron Teeter, and Diane Williams. So we work together. And to prepare this slate of candidates for the vacant board and nominating committee positions, as well as board secretary and board treasurer. We're fortunate to have interviewed a great number of worthy candidates that are eager to help UCA. And on behalf of the nominating committee, I'm eager to announce actually this slate. We're really excited about them. And I think there may be a slide, but if there's not, I'll just go ahead. And if you're here, please stand when I read your name. So for the board, the 24-25, or the next two-year term, Valerie Bryant, Gail Crawford, Peter Overby, Dan Patterson, and Dan is also nominated as treasurer, so he'll serve as a dual row. Returning board members being nominated for their second terms, or their next term anyway. Not sure whether it's Burke's second or third. Barbara Bazell, Burke Kapler, and Elizabeth Vanderputten. For board secretary, Emily Abraham is continuing. And assistant treasurer, Bob Geyer. For the new members of the nominating committee, replacing Pat and I are Barbara Laughlin and Elizabeth Kaufman. Hi, Liz. Thank you. And I just want to say that the nominating committee is always welcome to hear your suggestions for people who you would like to see in leadership. So you can contact any of the nominating committee about any ideas that you have for the coming year, and you can nominate yourself. So we welcome those suggestions. Thank you. Thanks, Burke.
So Mary said it already, but I actually want to just take a moment and recognize the really amazing work of the NomCom this year. So the process involves talking to people who are actually interested in leadership, talking to people who are recommended by others to be in leadership, and talking to people who are just thinking about leadership, and then some people who have never thought about leadership before. And the nominating committee did this. They had over 50 such conversations, and all of those conversations are going to bear fruit for this congregation, either with the folks who are going to be joining us as a result of the votes today, or down the road for years to come. So for everything the nominating committee did this year, one more round of applause, please. Yeah. So we'll now open up the discussion period for any discussion on the slate of nominees. Any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that? Yeah, come on, Lavona. Yes, would you like a list of the delegates to the General Assembly? You want to know who they are? Yes, actually. I think they are in the materials. This actually, Lavona, and for purposes of the folks in the sanctuary, the slate of nominations that was provided as part of the annual meeting notice should have the complete list of everyone. So it would have the Board of Trustees, the officers, it would have the nominating committee members, and then it would also have the General Assembly delegates. Do we have that list? I just didn't bring the materials with me.
I'll grab it. I'll grab it, and then I can offer it later if that's okay.
Yep.
Congregation does not vote on it.
Yeah, it's informational. But the congregation is not voting on those delegates. You're voting on the Board of Trustees and the officers and the NomCom committee members. Okay. Any other questions before we proceed? Give that a minute. Any? Yeah. Just looking to see if we can dig those up. I'm just waiting to see. Are you able to grab them?
It's going to take me a minute,
That's
so
fine.
why don't you proceed, and we can offer that afterward if people want to. Oh, Zeke has it in his binder. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so thank you. By the way, approval to people who like binders. All right, so the UUCA delegates to the 2023 General Assembly are Pat Bodner, Nancy Brown, Diana Day, Roberta Finkelstein, Barry Finkelstein, Brian Flaherty, Greg Forte, David McTaggart, Mary Pike, Bruce Ryder, Stephanie Thomas, Diane Julius, Elizabeth Vanderputten, and Diane Williams. So again, that's the list of folks who are representing us. The board has approved them. Those folks are not up for vote today and should not have been on the ballot. Any other questions about General Assembly delegates?
Thank you, Zeke.
Yep. Okay. Okay. All right. So that actually concludes the presentation of the voting items and the discussion for each item today. So this is where we're taking that 10-minute break we talked about. So if you have not voted yet, this is the time to do so. So this is where if you can use the link in the email that was sent to you from Election Buddy. Again, we sent out a reminder email today, so it should be near the top of your inbox. If you're watching on YouTube and you need to log out of the meeting to access your email, please do so. You can vote and then rejoin the live stream at the same link that you had. And if you have questions about that, you can email Annie Parker. It should go without saying, this is not Chicago. You can only vote once. And many of you have already voted. So if so, this is a great chance to take a short break while we wait for those who haven't voted yet. But again, this is your last opportunity. If you haven't voted, you have 10 minutes to do so, and then we're done. So I will tell you that we are at 1:49, so we'll be back at 1:59 to resume and conclude the meeting. All right, thank you. Yeah. Good. All right, folks, we're bringing everybody back in for the last bit of the annual meeting. For folks who are coming in, we're almost done. So, yep. Yep, great. Okay. So, with that, I'm welcoming folks back with our last agenda item, which is the announcement of our voting results. Emily has the totals from Election Buddy, and Emily, take it away.
All right, the moment everyone has been waiting for.
Yeah.
To make sure my mic's on. Yes, okay. All right, so the results are in. We have a number of votes that is well above a quorum. And so I'm excited to announce we have approval of our June 11th, 2023 annual meeting minutes. There were 149 votes for approval and 1 vote against. The item is approved. No vote noted. Yes, we invite input from the no vote to take into account for the drafting of this year's meeting minutes.
Yep.
For item number 2, approval of the 2024-25 annual budget, there were 156 votes for and 2 votes against. The item is approved.
Yay.
Item number 3 is approval of the nominating committee's slate for members of the Board of Trustees, UUCA officers, and the new nominating committee members. And they were all approved. The totals were between 142 and 158. That must mean that there were 158 votes for in this item 3.
Yep.
And no votes against. Yep. That item is also approved.
Yeah.
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 Yep. Yep.
Got it. Yeah.
Great.
All were approved with totals between 142 and 158 votes for.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Emily. So that actually completes the business for the annual meeting, and with that, the work of the 2023-2024 church year. Congratulations to the new members of the board, to the new members of the nominating committee, new officers. We're going to be working together. We're going to be working together starting very soon. So I'm looking forward to doing that as we kick off the 2024-2025 year. On behalf of the board, I just want to thank every single person in the congregation, you all who are here, you all who are on YouTube, and everybody who didn't join us today for helping make this last year as great as it was. As we say, we are the church. So whether you came to Sunday services or watched online, or whether you are on more committees than you could count, you're part of this church. And we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you very much. Reverend Amanda, you want to bring us home?
I do. I want to actually invite everyone who's on the board this year to stand. Thank you so much. And just to say, truly, it has been a great pleasure to work with these folks this year, some of whom are continuing, some of whom are finishing their service. Lila actually thought she finished her service a couple years ago, but surprise, came back to fill a role. And it truly is an honor and a pleasure to work with all of you. I am so grateful. Not every minister can say that, and I'm really glad to be able to, with a lot of gratitude. So thank you so much. Yay, board! And yay, everybody. Amen.
Amen.